Okay, welcome to what I believe is the final session. You've made it this far. We'll try to keep you awake for another hour and 15 minutes. This is Advanced Warehouse Management, a day in the life, process manufacturing. If you attended Jason's sessions before this, a lot of that was a more deep dive, more showing everything in the inbound and outbound processes. This process session is going to be more of a what's new, or we're going to show what's improved since CU9 and really even after CU10 in regards to process manufacturing. Before I go too far, my name is Tim Satchram. I am a support escalation engineer based out of Fargo, North Dakota, here in the U.S. I have been with Microsoft for just under 9 years, with 6 or 7 years in the GP realm, always supporting manufacturing and supply chain there, and then after that I moved over to AX right around the time that warehousing came out, and I've been on it ever since, also doing any supply chain on the AX side as well. Johan?
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Johan Hoffmann. I work as a PM in the RD team in Copenhagen, where I've been working in the manufacturing team for many years now. I've been with Microsoft for 8 years. I've been working very close with Tim after the release of R3 on the warehouse integration as such. And I think we often are in daily contact on all the projects that Tim is working with. And we've been continuously working on the integration between warehousing and manufacturing. The title here is Process Industries. We've been engaged with a lot of process industries customers, but also discrete customers. And we see a lot of these requirements are aligning. So it's not only applicable for the process industry vertical, what you will see today, it's also something that is applicable across the different industries. Yeah? Yep. So I'll walk you through the agenda for this session. I have a nice job here because I'm just going to tell you the agenda and introduce the different demos, and then Tim, he will do the demo, and that is great. That is not completely true. I'm actually doing the last demo. 3 demos are done by Tim in AX 2012, and I will do the last demo in Dynamics AX, the new one. We made this enhancement in the new one, and then we are porting it back. It is being done now, but we didn't have the version ready, so that's why I'm showing it in the new one. So the first thing we are going to look at is what we call policy for picking in license plate controlled locations. We will see how we can set up a criteria for either doing order picking or staging from license plate controlled locations. Of course, we'll elaborate on that. Then we are going to talk about an enhancement on the location directive for raw material picking. We will see how we can round up work for raw material picking so the quantity will match the handling unit in which we are picking the material. This is only applicable so far for raw material picking. Could also already heard that it can also be applicable for other picking processes, but so far it's done for raw material picking. Then we made some enhancements for reporting as finished from the handheld device. So one of the, I'll say maybe a little bit embarrassing gaps we had in the first release was the ability to overproduce and using scrap on the formula lines. Now we enhance this scenario so we can set up tolerances for overproduction and using scraps. We also enabled the handheld user to complete the production or batch order when reporting as finished from the handheld device. That was not possible in the first version. You could only report, and then it would be a back-end operation to complete or end the order. We will, of course, tell you more about that. The last thing we are going to demo a little bit is the use of serial numbers on the production floor in the warehouse operations. That is both on the raw material side, where we consume material that are serialized for the production orders. We will show you how we can postpone the registration of serial numbers at time of consumption. And we will also show an example on how to register the serial number when we report the finished good. So these 4 things are the topic for this session. So let's start with the first things first. So the policy for picking in license plate controlled locations. So as you know, a warehouse location can be set up to be license plate controlled or non-license plate controlled. So that is, do you want to track your inventory on the locations by the license plate, or do you not want to do that? There's been a speciality for raw material picking. So when you pick raw material for production from a non-license plate controlled location, you will always pick the ordered quantity. So if the production order requests 1,000 pounds of a material, then when you release work for that production order, work will be generated for 1,000 pounds of that. That is not the case when you pick from what you call license plate controlled locations. When that is done, you always, or the warehouse worker will always pick in full, the full quantity of the license plate. That has been the implementation that came with the first version. We call that process staging. So you stage the license plate to the production floor, whereas the other method, we call that order picking, where you pick the requested quantity. So that is all fine. Lots of our customers want, in general, to track their inventory by license plate, and that is good. Also, many of our customers want to stage license plate to the production floor. But we also have customers who don't want to stage the entire license plate because they are maybe only using a fraction of the material on the license plate, and they don't have any other orders that will utilize what's remaining, and then they have to spend time bringing the license plate or the pallet back to the warehouse. It can also be a matter of how to utilize the space on the production floor, that you cannot have that many pallets on the production floor. So you want to track it by license plate, but when you release work from the production orders, you only want to pick the requested quantity from the order. So what we did, we introduced this policy, how to control license plate controlled location, or how to control picking on license plate controlled location. Do you want to do order picking, or do you want to do staging? So the option to do order picking from license plate controlled location, that is what we introduced now. So this has been an enhancement that we made based on the feedback we got from various customers, and this is both in the process industries, but it is also in discrete industry. And this enhancement came with a KB article that you can see here, and I have also written a blog post where I go into all the details about how to set it up, and also a detailed example on how it works. But you will see that now, because now I'll give it over to Tim, who will show you how that works.
Yeah, and before I start in on the demo, you can flip over to 6. One thing for the people here that maybe don't use process, this is all new to you. If your picking location is not license plate tracked, it's always going to be order picking. This functionality is really only for license plates. So if we're picking a license plate, The previous functionality was bring the whole license plate. Think of it as a 100-pound bag of flour. We're just going to bring the whole bag of flour into our manufacturing area and use it throughout the day, even though our order was only for 75. So it made sense to move the whole license plate every time. It's more when we have larger items where it doesn't make sense to take up space in the manufacturing floor that we added this order picking functionality. So what I'm going to show here is an example of both. And my items probably don't make the most sense because I did a bunch of small items, so sorry. So my stage example, I'm going to create some pasta. And the only thing I'm putting in my pasta is cheese. I'm not very good at making pasta. So to show how this is set up, first I'm going to show you the cheese because that is where our option is to do our material picking in the license plate location. So here, staging was the original functionality. That's saying take the whole license plate, bring the whole license plate into the input location. And just to show you what we have, I'm going to do manage inventory, my on hand. I have 100 physical inventory. Oops. And I have it all on one license plate, LP7, in location LP007. And my pasta, we're going to do a very simple formula where we need 60 quantity of cheese to make 10 pieces of pasta, 10 packets of pasta. I kept everything as eaches for these two examples just to make them go quick. I also did not create a route to keep things going quickly. So, excuse me. The next thing I'll show you is the location directive. There's nothing major in this. It's just the default location directive that comes in Contoso. At least for this example it is. And like I said, I'm not going to go in depth on location directives and location profiles, all of that. We're mainly going for showing the new functionality in here. But for those that have been working with WHS, you have a pick and a put for your raw material picking. You're setting your pick. When it goes from the pick, it goes down to the lines, tells you how to locate quantity, how you're going to separate your lines, and then chooses your directive actions. This is considered a wide open location directive. I'm not setting anything specific here.
You could maybe show the query just to see that it's totally flexible, so you can set up a query to say, okay, for this.
Yep. Yeah, so right now I'm just saying warehouse 51. Any location that has physical inventory is available to set as my location for work. If I wanted to specify only pick from bulk locations or only pick from picking locations, anything like that, you can get way more granular with it. And Jason kind of touched on that in the earlier sessions. But for this, we're going to keep things wide open so we can do examples of both and see how the inventory comes in. Yeah, we're missing it. Oh. Sorry about that. So next, let's take a look at the warehouse, which can be reached from setup, warehouse setup, warehouses. And the reason why I'm coming in here is because, those that have worked with Process and WHS, when you have a route and you have resources, you can set your input locations based by your resource. And so you can have different areas of your production, and you can have where your raw material picking will bring your raw materials to a specific resource input location. Since I didn't do a route, it defaults back to this default production input location. If you have no route, or if it can't find a production input location anywhere else, this is the last place it stops.
Yeah. So in general, you can set up the work to be split per operation. If your operation are on different physical places, then of course you want to direct your material to the place of consumption.
Right. And so that's an example of that is that I want my cheese to go to my first input location. Further down, I have packing, so I want my pallets and my wrapping and everything to be at another location. You can set those up, different operations, different resources, and then on the resources, you can specify different input locations. And so your raw material picking will direct them based on those. So I've already gone way more in depth on that than I planned, but since we don't have a route, we don't have resources, we're setting a default, and that's where our work is going to pull from. The other nice thing about coming into this window is, as part of the order picking KB that we're showing an example of now, we also added this issue status after raw material picking option. And we have options of reserved physical or picked. Before the KB, everything was treated as picked, which meant deduct it as soon as we have completed the work. So rather than, as soon as it gets put to the location, it's removed from inventory, no more visibility into it, it's considered into WIP, I guess. The new option, reserved physical, we've completed the work, we've put it into the input location. We still see it in inventory, but it has a reserved physical status. So you still have visibility into that where before you didn't. So next I'm going to create a batch order for the pasta. And you saw I pulled in my quantity of 10. I'm going to do my reservations on release, create my order. Estimate. And release, so that my work is created during the release. So you can see here, and we'll show in the next one, our work is created essentially the same. The functionality is more on the mobile device. You're going to see a difference. But for this production order, we've created work to grab 60 cheese out of the LP7 location and deliver it to my my input location of 002. So I'm going to log into the mobile device.
Yes?
Yep.
No, it is always at release. And you release based on what you have reserved. So there's a dependency on reservation. As you can see, Tim set up the system to reserve at release. If you have reserved less, like a manual reservation, work will only have been generated for that portion of the material.
Okay, so I'm going to do just my production picking. And as a reminder, this is my staging, so this is where we're going to grab the entire license plate. And you'll see our required quantity is 60. I'm going to put in my LP7, and I know my license plate. We can just pretend I'm there scanning it. When I click OK, it looks at that license plate and it says you actually have a quantity of 100 on it, so you need to pick up the entire 100. And I noticed I didn't apply an extra KB, so I apologize, but this is going to look a little odd. When it finishes here, and we do our pick, next is our put. It says we're putting 60. There is a KB that addresses that, so now it says you're putting 100. Sorry, I thought I had everything on here. So I'm going to complete my put. And so my work has been completed. There's nothing really to see here. It keeps our work quantity as 60 because our work for that production order was still 60. If you come look at our on hand by location, I now have an additional 40 in my input location of 002 that was left over, and there's nothing left in that LP7 location, so it doesn't show up anymore. Next, we'll move on to pizza, which is going to show the order picking functionality. Once again, I'm not very good at making stuff, so pizza is only pepperoni. There's nothing else in it. And just to show you the change in setup, very basic. Oops. Scroll down to the warehouse and management section, and this one is set to order picking. To save on time, I'll just tell you the formula is exactly the same. I need 60, so that's all I plan to pick. So I'm going to go create another order. For my generic pizza. So we will estimate. And do the release to create my work. Surprisingly, I haven't had an error yet. I'd pretend that it was on purpose. I come from the support org, so I like to see errors. My work, as you can see, is exactly the same, except for we got different products here. We'll go through the mold device to do the picking. And I already know it's LP8 is what it's located on. What I didn't show is my on hand right now in LP008 is one license plate of 100, exact same as what I had for the other item. So here we're saying 60 right now. After we click OK, this is where we switch to 100 on the staging example. Now it stays at 60. We're only going to pick 60. So Oops. So I'm putting to my location only 60 rather than the 100. And just to show that in the warehouse, my 002 has nothing extra of the pepperoni. And back in our LP008 location, we still have the 40 left over on the license plate at the picking location.
So one question could be that in the example where you did the staging, then you have excessive material on the input location. So what happens next time you create a batch order and release that? Then, of course, it will be looking at the input location. If there is any material there, it will take that, of course. It will not generate new work if there is sufficient material on the input location. Yeah, if you want to do the staging. And if it was auto picking, it will only take the remaining. Exactly. So we didn't do the consumption yet. What Tim told about this status picked or reserved physical, it confuses. That was why we introduced the reserved physical, because when it is status picked, it appears as deducted in the on-hand form. And they say, where is it? We didn't consume it yet. So if you use the reserved physical, then you can see it there. So that's an option.
And just to wrap up, what we showed was the difference between the way it worked before. Now we added the ordered quantity option so that we don't have to take the full license plate. And you can set it up based on item. You don't have to apply it to everything. If you have some items that it makes more sense to order pick, do that. Or if you want to do everything by license plate, you can keep it that way as well.
No. So the question was, does it consider same batch selection? It's a functionality we know on the sales side, where you say, I'm going to sell a customer 1,000 pieces, and I want to ensure that the system only, or we only ship the same batch. We don't want to mix batches. That is, unfortunately, so far only applicable on the sales side. We heard that requirement. That could be nice also to have on the production side. Yes?
That's it for that demo.
Okay, thank you.
We see each other once a year, so sorry.
Okay, so with that said, we'll then take the next topic. So the next topic we call round-up work for raw material picking. So in the example that Tim just showed, we formulated the material in inches. It could also be typically pounds if we're talking, for example, food industries. So we formulate in pounds. We want to manufacture 4,400 pounds of something, and in order to do that, we need 510.10 pounds of an ingredient. And we also consume it in pounds. But the reality is that the warehouse worker, what he sees, or she sees, is bags, 50-pound bags, or pallets, different handling units. So that is interesting. And the first, before, when we acquired the solution, what the system will do, and that is applicable for some customers, we would be able to generate work. In this example, if it's 50-pound bags, then it will generate work telling the warehouse worker to pick 10 50-pound bags, 500 pounds, and then we have a remaining quantity of 10.10 pounds. So the warehouse worker would have to break the bag, take his weight, and then weigh off 10.10 pounds. And I actually got confirmed that some customers do that. So it is the task of the warehouse worker to weigh off the ordered quantity. But of course, I had some dialogue, and very fast we got the feedback that is not the way we do it, because we don't want the warehouse worker to run around with a weight under his arm. He's moving handling units. And then what is going to be weighed off, that is going to happen on the machine. So that implies that they would like to see that we can round up the quantity to match the handling unit. And that actually means over-picking. So we worked on that and introduced that. Again, the resulting work in this, what we can do now, we can also do the before example, but what we can do now is that we can, in this example, round up to the 11 bags. And that is what Tim is going to show you now. So I'll hand it over to Tim. Again, this was shipped with a KB article, so it's something you can download if you want to have this. And there's also a blog post that you can look into. And on these blog posts, you can also comment. So that is, for me, also a good source of feedback.
That's a good thing to point out. So the previous one, there was a blog post as well. And the very first comment on the last, the staging versus order picking, was, hey, this is great, but you know what would be better is if we could round up. And so from there, we were able to get this one.
Yeah. So you can round up on the bill of material. That is possible. Actually, when I was in the dialogue during the development or scoping of this, my first suggestion would be to round up on the material line. But then the feedback was, no, that doesn't work, because when you estimate the production order, then it will estimate according to the rounded up quantity. But the reality in this example is that you only consume 510.10 pounds for the order. That means that when the order is done, you have a remaining quantity left on the input location that can be consumed by the next order or brought back. If you round up on the material line, then you round up the consumed quantity. So that is also an option, and that might be applicable for some customers. You are able to do the roundup on the material line as part of the legacy functionality.
Yep.
Okay, demo and
6.
Still number 6.
All right, so for this one, I'm making soup, and all I'm putting in is flour, which is not going to be very tasty. And I took Johan's example right down to it. That my formula size is 44.75. My quantity that I need to make that is 515.15. And like he said, we do 50 pounds a bag. So to get to that, it's going to be 10 bags plus an extra 10 pounds, 10.15 pounds. So in order to get the work, I'm first going to show what happens now at a typical customer, how they're going to set this up. So for that, I'm going to dive into the location directive a little bit, kind of show more of what you can do with it. And for this, we are work order type raw material picking, and we're concentrated on the pick. We're just going to put to the input location, so there's not much to do there. My first sequence, I am going to restrict by unit, and I'm just going to add one now as well that goes to the same quantities. I just want to have one that picks up bags, and I want to have one that picks up pounds separately. And if I flip back to here, after I've saved with my restrict by unit checkbox, the restrict by unit option comes up. I'm going to change that to bags. and resort it so that it makes sense. If you haven't done much with warehouse, just remember it goes in sequences. So right now I'm doing the pick. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pick based on bags first. And if I don't finish by doing that, I'm going to come down and do my picking by pounds after that. And I do need to add an action. I'm just going to say I'm picking pounds. I'm going to leave it wide open again because I can pick from anywhere. I actually have all of my quantities in the same location. Some companies will do it where bags are in one location and the extra scrap, or not scrap, but extra pounds of material are in a different location. And so that's why they'll break it up, and then they will specifically send people to that location to grab a bag or a pound or whatever else.
So maybe you should also mention that of course we have a relation between the bags and the pounds, and that is the unit conversion on the item. And we also have this unit sequence group. Yeah.
Yep. So the unit sequence group, every item that is warehouse enabled has a unit sequence group to identify what units it can be stored in and the default units that can be used. For these two items, we are going, pounds is the lowest unit. The way this window reads is lowest to largest. And bags is the larger unit. And flipping back to my items. You can see my conversion is 1 bag equals 50 pounds. And provided I set everything up correctly. Just for your note, I have 5,000 of these sitting in a prod input location, which is named really wrong. It's not an input location, that's just the name of the location. It is not LP tracked, so we're not going to have any examples of that right here. But we'll go ahead and create a production order. For my disgusting soup. All right, so that same order, I'm going to estimate. And release to create my work. And this is where we want to show, this was what happened before. This was the typical setup of a customer that was running into this. So you can see before we would grab 10 bags and we'd still have an extra 15.15 pounds that we'd have to weigh off and bring separate from all the bags. So what this new KB did is added the ability to round up, and if you were paying attention during the location directive, the checkbox was there. It's just a real quick change. So I'm going to cancel this work and just go off the same production order. We'll remove it off the wave. So to enable the new functionality, I'm going to go back to my location directive, raw material picking, and it's the pick. So what we want to do is we want to round up the line that is associated with bags, and because we've done this, we really don't need that second line anymore. So we can just remove that off of there. And so now what this is saying is we want to only do bags, and we want to round up so that if we're over 10, under 11, we want to round up, make sure we have 11. And I'll go back to my production order to re-release. And you can see new work is created. And now we get a quantity of 11 bags instead of breaking off into a separate pounds.
I think if you click on the transaction on the lines, so here you can actually see that the material line is requesting the ordered quantity, and it is reserved work, and there's something left, and that is what is going to be left if you backflush your production order from that operation.
Yeah, so I'll actually complete the work from the form here. And then my input location, will have that extra quantity available. So you can see my flour and the quantity that Johan pointed out before, the 34, is available in the input location. And that's it for that one.
Yeah. Okay.
What about the rest now?
So the rest now is available after, if you backflush, then there will be this remaining part. And it will remain there until you consume it. And that is the point, that if you create a new production order for the same material, it will take that and create work for the remaining. Yeah. 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 There's an excess material on the input location. You overpicked because you didn't want to weigh off. You want to pick in whole bags. So you have some excessive material there, and that will be considered during the next release.
Yeah. So next time, because you had 34 extra and it was 515, so the next time it would grab 10 bags instead of 11 bags.
Yeah. You could, of course, also bring it back if you want to do that. Okay, and then I'll switch back. So reporting as finished is the title here, and with the warehouse solution and manufacturing, what we've seen until now is, you could call it pure warehouse processes. But of course, you also have all the operation processes or the production processes, starting production order, reporting on jobs, reporting as finished. It is also has warehouse implications because you report the finished good to the inventory. And so that also came with the solution, the option to report as finished from the handheld device. It was only enabled for discrete orders or for production orders. What we did was we also enabled it for batch orders, so you can also report on co- and byproducts. We did need to do some work there. It was not possible to end a production order. So when the warehouse worker reported her last pallet or last portion, there was no way to indicate that, well, now this order is finished. So if you look at the orders in the back end, you'll just see a started order or an order in progress. So that message has to be done not through the system, through other channels. So we quickly got the feedback that it should be possible for the machine operator in some cases, to say now I did the last report here, so I want to close out the order. But then on another, we also got the feedback, no, that is not they're not doing that. It's handled backend. There was an option, an handheld option called last pallet. So that was a separate menu item. So after you report it as finished, you could select this last pallet. It's still there. You scan the production or batch order number. And what happened was that it put a mark on the order. And then you could use a filter backend and filter all the orders with this last pallet. And then you could, as a backend operation, report as finished. So a little more. And there was also some, because actually a lot of things happen when you end mark a production order. If you have not, for example, consumed the full quantity of materials, you will have open transactions there. If you want to close the order, of course, you should also clean up all these open transactions so they are not generating demand. Also for the finished product, if you are reporting, for example, underproducing, it should also clean up the remaining part, so you would not, for example, selling stuff that is not coming. So it sounds simple, but there's a lot to this end option. But that is something we worked on and now introduced the option to end mark a production order. And there's also a little story about a parameter called physical reduction that is a part of the legacy suite that I think Tim will tell you about. It is relating to using scrap. Consider, for example, process industry scenario where you are producing 1,000 pounds of something. You have ingredients, and on one of the ingredients you estimate scrap. So from experience, you scrap 5% during the process. But you might be lucky, or you might have a very skilled machine operator, a good machine that day. So you don't scrap 5%, you only scrap 2%. So instead of scrapping ingredients, you actually manage to get more out of the machine, more finished good. That is overproduction. But you do that with the same amount of material. And what backflushing is normally doing is it's consuming proportional to what your report has finished. So if you overproduce, it will also overconsume. But you don't want that in this scenario I just explained. It should just consume the estimated quantity for 1,000 pounds, and you should be able to report 1,050 pounds. You can do that with the physical reduction parameter, and that has always been there in the back end. But of course, that is also a feedback we got from especially the process industry segment, that when you end with overproducing and you have this parameter set, then it should not error out, because if you don't set it, it will error out saying, I don't have enough material on the input location. You only brought the estimated quantity. So now there's a lot to this story, because we also had issues with overproducing in general. So we enabled that, and we did that by leveraging something called a quantity validation parameter or tolerances. So you can set up a surplus that you are allowed to meet, a threshold. That is what we did. And we have, again, more information here. A separate blog post for overproduction, how to enable that. And then also a blog post for reporting as finished with the end mark, and also an explanation about this physical reduction option. So with that said, I'll give it over to Tim again for a demo.
A note on the overproduction blog post was there is actually an end-to-end script scenario down at the bottom of that blog post. That's great. You're going to see pretty much the same example here, but it's something good to provide customers that want to understand it better, and well, partners that want to understand it better as well. So for this scenario, first thing we're going to do is just standard overproduction. We're not going to end mark anything. We're not going to do any physical reduction. That'll come later. Before, when you tried to overproduce from the mobile device, we didn't allow it. You'd get an error saying quantity reported as finished exceeds the quantity started. Sorry, you can't do this. You'd have to do it from the client itself. So to allow overproduction now, we need to adjust a few things. And it's handled under, as he said, manufacturing execution, production parameters. And under report as finished, the first thing we check here is accept error is necessary for overproducing. And
so I could add to that, what we did, we leveraged the way the reporting as finished from the manufacturing execution system works. So that is exactly the same way we do it with the handheld. And that is the way it works. I think this accept error is a little bit ambiguous parameter to have. Except, why should you accept an error? But what we did with this, as far as we came with this fix, was to leverage the way manufacturing execution works. We later would like to enhance that in general, both for manufacturing execution and also for the handheld.
Okay, and what I filled out while Johan was talking here is we want to validate the feedback quantity. This is what allows us to do any overproduction. I'm going to base mine off of the production plan quantity. You can do it off the started quantity. For my first example, I'm just going to do surplus production of 10%, and I'm going to allow production shortage of 100%, just in case I want to only produce half of a batch at a time. So I'm going to go back to my pasta order. And something we didn't demo here, and I'm trying to remember when it was added, is you can do a production start from the mobile device now. I don't think that was available.
It was actually.
It was?
Yes, it was.
Sorry. I know that a lot of people have started using that in their warehouses to have people on the floor start their productions rather than coming back into AX to do it. So I'm going to start my pasta order. And then I'm going to go back to my mobile device. And I'm going to do a RAF and put away. Report is finished and put away. And you'll see it comes up with the prompt of we're going to do a quantity of 10. Well, for whatever reason, the staff was way more efficient today, and they created 12 off of this production order. And here you can see it's gone back to check my feedback quantity. And remember, I put 10%. So the most I should be able to do is 11. It's not going to let me put in 12 unless my feedback quantity is increased. So if I switch that back, and I'll say I only finished 11, it'll allow me to overproduce in a second. Yep. And tricked it. All right. So it finished the RAF process or the pick process, and now it's saying you need to put these 11 into LP001. I had the auto-generate LP option marked on my menu item. I'll show the menu item as part of another example here. So I'll just go ahead, complete that. My work is completed. And if I refresh my order, my remaining status is now ended. And what he was talking about it with, you now have the ability to end during report is finished. Because I didn't do that now, I still have a status of started. If I was able to end, it would change to report is finished. So that'll be our next example. So in order to do end marking, it's an option that can be set on your mobile device item. So I'm going to go back to setup, mobile devices, mobile device menu items, and go to my RAF and put away. And down here is the new checkbox that gets added by the KB article. And that just allows the job to be ended. And what this does is it adds a drop-down box to your mobile device menu item that gives you end job as an option. By default, it's always going to be no unless you set a default. So you'll have to switch it to yes. And we'll just go run through an example of that. And I'm actually going to increase my feedback quantity because I'm just going to do it on the same production order. Oops. So, and for those that haven't worked with WHS very much, to see changes with the mobile device menu item, you don't have to log out, you don't have to do anything like that. You just have to cancel out, go back into it, and now I have my end job as an option. So I'm going to do the same production order. For pasta, I'm going to overproduce by 1. And I'm going to mark my end job as yes. And now it's letting me move on because I increased my tolerance. Click OK. My work is completed. And let me go back to the production order. And you can see now my pasta went from started status to report is finished because we've finished off of all of those, or we've finished, reporting is finished.
Yeah. So we have an option called move by template. So if you have material there, you can scan by the license plate and it will generate work. And you could also have this location directive telling you where's, identifying a free location for that to go back. Or if it's going to a fixed location, it will do that, depending on your setup of this template. So that is a different work type. It's not raw material picking, it would be what we call move by template. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it will generate warehouse work, but with that you also have the option to override the suggested location. So if you want to put it somewhere else, you could override that.
But it is still going to be a pick, put, pair.
Yeah.
Right. Based off of, yes, it would be a different work template.
Yeah. So we have that in our backlog to have separate parameters, for example, for the handheld device. So you'll be able to set up. With this fixed, we leverage the existing, and that was also a scoping decision. But I totally get your point. That this accept error is actually, it is checking a lot of things. First of all, I think the nature of the production or the origin was very discrete, where you say, if I produce that many finished goods, I consume that many raw materials, and that must fit. So there was an error if you tried to produce more. Then it was because you forgot to account for the materials. But when we come into these more advanced scenarios or for process industries, it's not uncommon to overproduce or have tolerances in the output.
That kind of goes into my next example here. So with pasta, which we just finished, if you remember, my raw material was the staged raw material, so I had plenty of extra in the input location to overproduce. For pizza, I only moved 60 pepperoni, so I can only make 10 pizzas off of that. So what we're going to show here now is where the physical reduction flag comes into play, because I don't have any more in my input location. I don't have anything more to help me overproduce. So let me go and start my pizza. I'll flip back to my mobile device. And just to split things up, my first run I did 5. I'm not going to end my job now because I'm still going to do an additional run. Everything there looks good. We put to the finished good location. When I run through it again, I'm actually going to report as finished 6 because I was able to create another one. And I'm going to flip my end job to yes because there will be no more runs after this. And I click OK. And you get this error because, like I said, pepperoni was order picking, so we only brought 60 to the location. So based on the formula, I would need another 6 in order to create an extra 1. And because I don't have that, that's kind of where that physical reduction flag comes in to play. Is we're saying we were more efficient. For whatever reason, we were able to make 11 pizzas off of the ingredients for 10. So we shorted people on them, probably. So I'm going to go and set my physical reduction, which is a production parameter under production control and journals. And like Johan said, this was existing functionality before that you could use in AX. This is just the first time we've added it to the mobile device. So now when I come back here, I'm still choosing to end my job. I'm still overproducing. And when I click OK, it's not doing it. Let me back up. Oh, I haven't saved. And now I'm able to finish my pick or finish my RAF process, and it allows me to put the overproduction away. And so that is another thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, physical production or physical reduction flag is only available with NJob. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah,
something to keep in mind.
That was deliverable or something we did by purpose. Right. It's only kicking in when you put in the end job.
Right.
Yeah. Because otherwise you could come into problems.
Yep. So that covers the overproduction, it covers the ending production, and covers the physical reduction, which takes care of that demo.
Yeah. Do you have more questions? We don't have that much time, so I will I will switch to the last section here. Serial numbers in production. So far I have some connectivity problems. So if I'm going to show you on the new AX, then I have to be able to connect. I put up the example on 2012, one of the things. So I'll show you what I can there if this is not working. Just check. But yeah, so far we've been very, I think, process-centric. So serial numbers is maybe not that process-centric. The customers I've been speaking with was discrete manufacturers, machine builders, and so on. And they, of course, have the requirements for tracing and tracking by the serial number dimension. We had a great deal of that already with what came in R3. So when you have a serial-controlled material in the warehouse, the warehouse worker can scan that particular serial number and bring it to the production floor. So that is possible already. But the feedback we got is that in many cases you actually don't want to register all these serial numbers when you receive material, so you bring it into your inventory. You don't want to break up a pallet with 200 valves in order to scan each of all these serial numbers. So you bring it into inventory. Where you actually want to track is in which production order did I consume which serial number. So we want to kind of postpone the tracking of the serial number until consumption time in production. So that is the time where the machine operator takes this valve and look at the engraved serial number and then register that, and then we can track against the production order. One question that will obviously pop up is, okay, what if you have a production order of 10 pieces and you register one serial number, which of these 10, and the finished good is serial controlled, so which of the 10 did this serial number go into? We call this like the bill of material. So kind of a cross-reference between the finished good serial and the raw material serial is not something we have, something we here and would like to build. The first step here is the postpone register of serial at the point of consumption. So that was the kind of the material part. Also, what was not possible was to register report as finished by serial from the handheld device. The scenario here, we worked with a customer, also a machine builder. So they create a production order for 10 pieces. When they create the order, the serial numbers are generated by the system. They print out labels. Machine operator starts assembling the first one of the machines or whatever part. When that is finished, they will scan the serial number and then it's reported as finished to the inventory. So that is what we built, these two capabilities. And let's see if I can get this alive. Then I'll show it in the new AX. Or the AX, dynamic AX. And I think it was kind to me. So again, you have a blog post. The blog post is only addressing the material side. So postpone register of serial at time of consumption. I will be writing a blog post also on the report as finish side. So let's look at this example. So I'll go to the production control. So here are my production orders. I'll create a new production order for a product. This product is called T5172. It's a valve. It's in warehouse 51. And I have a bill of material, and I'll set up an order for, let's say, 10 pieces. And I have the reservation here. I could set it to at estimation time. And then I create the order. So now this order is created. If I look at the transactions for the finished good, I can see that it was automatically generating the serial numbers. This is standard functionality. We have something called a serial number group on the item level, where you can set up the format of the serial number, also the timing. So this was at creation time. It could also be a time of reporting to the inventory. If we look at the bill of material, we have a flow meter. That is just the example. So we are going to consume 1 flow meter, and that is a serialized item. And if I look at the on-hand for this flow meter, I'll go to the overview here. So I can look at the dimensions. It's on this bulk location in the warehouse. As you can see, if I open the dimensions display and mark the serial number, it was received in the inventory without registering the serial number. So we don't track the serial numbers at this time. We track it by a license plate. So if I mark the license plate dimension, I can see that it's placed on LP5. So that is all good. So now I'm going to start production of this. So I'm estimating the order, and I set up the system to do the physical reservation at estimation, and then I'm going to release the order, or maybe I could schedule the order. And then release it. And at release, warehouse work is generated. And looking at the warehouse work, is suggesting to pick from this bulk location to my production input location. So now I'm going to process this work. So I use my handheld device. And I log in to the device. And I'll say production pick. I'll scan my work. And I'll scan the license plate on which the flow meters are placed, 10 pieces. And then I'm going to, in this case, actually stage. It has been set up to stage 20 pieces. I'm only requesting 10 pieces. That is the policy that you learned about. And now work is completed. Things are moved to the production input location. As you can see, I was not prompted for any serial numbers at that point in time. So now I'm starting consumption. And looking at the bill of material line again, I have a flushing principle on the bill of material line. And we can see that the flushing principle principle is set to be manual, so it will not flush when I start the order or report as finished. I'm actually reporting actuals here. I can say already now I do the reporting as actuals from the client, because we don't yet have the option to report actuals from the handheld. This is something that lies on our backlog, and we would very much like to build. But this is kind of the first step. So I'm going to start the order. 10 pieces. No picking list is generated because it's flushing manually. So I'm going to create a picking list manually. I could also have had the system by start generating the picking list and then don't post it. But I like to click. So sometimes. So I will select this lot ID. And then I'm the machine operator. I now consume this flow meter, so I learned that I need to account for what I'm consuming. So I will immediately post this. But that is not possible, because you must register the serial number. So you cannot consume before you register which serial number. So I'll look at my flow meter, read this serial number, and then I will go to this little menu called Register Serial Numbers. And then I will put in the serial number. And that's it. Now I should be able to post this journal because I provided the serial number. This serial number would be updated on the inventory issue transaction. And that way we are able to track it through the inventory at that level. You can, for example, use this tracing report to do so. So this was the material part. Now I actually finished the assembly of the first valve. So I'll go and report one of these serial numbers. So looking at my transactions, of course I have a label, but there is a serial number here called, for example, 51. So I will use that, and I'll go back to my handheld device. I will select a new menu item called Register Serial Number, and then I'll just put in the serial number. And of course it can identify the production order based on this serial number. It's unique for the serial number, so I don't need to scan that. And that actually completed the reporting as finished of that serial number. So if we go back to the transaction and refresh, then you can see that this serial number was received at the output location, and put away work was generated to put it to its final destination. So that concluded this demo, and I think it actually also, are we over a little bit over time? Okay, we have 4 minutes over. Sorry about that. So just to wrap up, we learned about these policies for doing order picking or station from license plate controlled locations. We learned about how to round up the quantity you want to pick to the handling units you have in the inventory. The material is in the inventory. We learned about end marking from the handheld device, the physical reduction parameter, setting up rules for overproduction, also actually underproduction is also included in these tolerances. And then at last some enhancements to handling serial numbers in production. So that concludes this round, and we'll be happy to see also you providing us feedback. And then we're also open for questions. You also have our email addresses there, so you can shoot us an email. We'll not maybe answer right away, but and you know these the feedback channels, Yammer group, and you can look at the blog post where you can also provide feedback. Thank you very much.